welcome to this session of Clarity in Crisis. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Brown, for joining us. As usual, we're looking for some juicy nuggets from you. In this session, we'll be discussing from breakdown to breakthrough from a family's perspective. And wasn't that song just beautiful? Because it's reminding me and you that God is for us. And he wants to pour down blessing on every generation. But we have to be able to recognize where we're having breakdowns so that we can get back on the rail. So Dr. Brown, once again, thank you. How are you doing this morning?
Well, I'm great. Thank you. It's always great.
You look like Professor Dr. Brown today, Professor Brown. So in this session of Angie Speaks, Stronger Than Splinters, I want to remind you of our mission here at Eve Speaks. We are dogged, deliberate, and just determined to become the next best version of ourselves. But I also want to say that we understand that God accepts us the way we are right now. So even though we talk about the next best version of yourself, just know that self-acceptance is critical as well. Where you are right now, God loves you right now, the way you are. However, we will continue to grow into the next best version of ourselves because that's his plan for our lives. So with that being said, let's jump into today's program, which is Family Breakdown to Breakthrough. Dr. Brown. So good to see you. Did I tell you that? Yes, good to see you. What is a dysfunctional family? And before I even ask that question, we can all agree that the coronavirus has put undue burdens on people during this time. Stressors that maybe were there before, but now they have been magnified threefold or maybe exponentially. So from that perspective, we thought we would dive into what it looks like to have a family that is healthy. Maybe you need to restore your family, or maybe your family is doing great. In any event, I'm sure you'll get some nuggets today. So Dr. Brown, what is a dysfunctional family?
Well, a dysfunctional family is a family that's full of conflict. There's a lot of misbehavior. There's a neglect, meaning people's needs are not being taken care of. There's abuse, unfortunately, and these things go on for so long that people begin to see it as normal. They think that all families work this way.
Right. You know, when I was a little girl, I remember visiting a neighbor's home. And I remember myself envying the little girl that was there because I wish that was my family, because everything seemed so calm and there was a peace there, a sense of security there that I was lacking. And I still remember feeling very distinctly the fact, but I didn't know it was because my family was dysfunctional. I felt like dysfunctional why I felt that way. But I definitely see what you mean. That the lack of the continuous conflict and the fear and all this stuff defines a dysfunctional family. So can you go ahead and I'm going to just go ahead and talk about my example of fear growing up in a dysfunctional family. But before we do that, can you go ahead and list for us again the characteristics of a dysfunctional family?
So a dysfunctional family is one in which fear rules. There's a disloyalty. There's a lack of leadership. There's little learning, and there's a lot of unhappiness. And so we can go into each one separately. I think you're gonna maybe talk about fear.
I'm gonna talk about fear, because fear was definitely a constant companion with me growing up. And in my family, emotions weren't talked about. I don't even think I knew the word emotion growing up. I don't think I did. So fear showed up in all kinds of ways. I would be afraid if something broke, if I broke a dish. As I wrote in my book, Peace Be Under Splinter, a green mug fell. I remember being hit because something fell and broke. Now in my family today, my kids break a dish and I'm like, no big deal. I tell them it's no big deal. And they actually have developed the attitude of no big deal. Whereas when I was growing up, it was a swift slap. So I had that fear of not making a mistake, not, oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, my phone is going crazy. The fear of not making a mistake, the fear of just the people who were supposed to be protecting me, I was afraid of them. That was just the wildest thing. And so because of that, I grew up, as an adult now, I can be very fearful. And it shows up in the fact that I'm full of anxiety sometimes, that is sometimes unexplained, irrational anxiety, and that's something that I deal with right now. So I definitely identify with fear being a component in a dysfunctional family.
And the other thing, disloyalty. Mm-hmm. What that means is that oftentimes there's a lot of anger, and so the person doesn't have a sense of a commitment to the family. In fact, the family is rather seen as being seen as the place of comfort. They're the enemy, and so other people become other people. No.
Okay.
Other people become the loyalty is more towards other people than it is towards the family members.
Did you experience any disloyalty in your own family growing up, or in your own experience? Do you have any experience of disloyalty?
Well, I can't recall any. I can't recall that in my own family. I had many other things going on, but that didn't seem to be one of them.
And it's like I say to people sometimes, I got a lot of problems, but that problem is not mine. It's not one of them. Lack of leadership. How did lack of leadership show up for you?
So lack of leadership means that the parents aren't able to take on the responsibilities that they need to take on in terms of providing guidance, in terms of what's okay, what's not okay in the family, in terms of helping children to understand what the world is all about, in terms of how they fit in, maybe how they differ from other families. So lack of leadership means that the children are just aimless. People are just existing, seemingly without any purpose.
And that idea of a lack of leadership, it's stark for me personally, because my husband now, he takes the lead in everything, and it's such a difference from how I grew up. He makes sure that not only are we provided for, but if Rachel, for example, my 6-year-old, is crying, he gets involved in wanting to know how do you feel? What do you want to talk about, Rachel? Or it's just such a different experience. And I can only attribute that to the fact that he has gotten the help to get to know Jesus. Someone sat down with him and studied the Bible, and he's on a journey himself to know Jesus. That's really the main differentiating factor. And so the leadership he provides in our household is, I sometimes, I don't even know how to handle it because I'm not used to it. I'll give you another example. When it snows, because I'm so used to operating on my own, if it snows and he's leaving for work early in the morning, he makes sure that he cleans off the car, cleans off the snow, And when I go out, it's all clean and and he warms it up just to me, and I just get to drive. That's what I mean by, that's what it means to me to have leadership in a home now, because, and it means so much. It seems so little, but leadership comes in so many forms. And I do see how a breakdown in leadership will definitely cause a family to be dysfunctional. This idea of a little learning, like I said, when I think of little learning in my family, I did not know the word emotion. I didn't even know that it existed in the dictionary. And definitely didn't know how to define it, because if I don't know it existed, then how could I possibly define it? Because nobody asked, how do you feel? People were not educated enough to know to ask that question. That emotional intelligence was missing. So I grew up just not knowing a lot of things that when I meet other people, they're like, you don't know that? Because there was no active teaching going on. And that's so critical in a family. In our family now, my husband and I, we sit down and we actually have teaching moments with our children, whether it's something from the Bible that relates to something in their character. Like my son, we are trying to train him to be more courageous. I have them stand in front of the mirror and say, I'm proud of me, give them affirmations, things to talk about to themselves that make them feel good about themselves. I knew no such thing growing up. So I see the difference for sure when there's little learning. Unhappiness. Well, all of that leads to unhappiness, wouldn't you say? Dr. Brown?
Unhappiness means that when you enter the home, there's no joy. You'd rather be where else than at home. And that sort of a situation, again, contributes to just a family not functioning in the best way that they need to function. When you talked about, we talked about leadership, and that's basically the parent taking responsibility for making decisions and for making sure that those decisions are enforced.
Right. Repeat that one more time.
So leadership in the family means that the parents are taking responsibility for making the decisions about what's good and what's not good for the family, as well as enforcing whatever the family rules are.
Right. That's definitely what it is, because I see it playing out in my own home now. But I am so grateful because, again, the only reason why there's been a shift in my generational history is because someone sat down and studied the Bible with me, and I consistently get help as well. It's not just a one and done, it's a continuous process. Good morning, Arlene. Thanks for joining. I see that she says good morning. So on that note, let's talk about the causes of dysfunction in families. What are some of the causes? I mean, I know what my cause was. It was rage in my family, a lot of dishes being broken and stuff. But from your experience and your practice, what would you say is the cause of dysfunction in families?
I would say parental abuse or neglect. That's one set of things. And usually that happens because one person has an issue. The other usually just goes along with the situation rather than try to rectify the problem. It's called enabling. A lot of people know it as being having enabling negative behaviors. The other thing that causes dysfunction in the family is addiction, as well as codependency or untreated mental illness.
Let's talk about that for a minute, the untreated mental illness, because, some people, sometimes we don't even know we have a mental illness. So that lack of awareness, how can someone know that they have a mental illness? I mean, somebody else may tell them, but how can you know for yourself that you have a mental illness?
Well, a few visible things, and you may not know. And even when other people know and tell you, you may not believe it. But mental disorder affects a person's mood, as in like bipolar disorder. That's an extreme. That's a psychotic disorder in which the person goes from one state of feeling very happy, whether or not there's a reason to feel happy, to another state of feeling absolutely sad when there's absolutely no reason to feel sad. There are multitudes of psychological disorders. There's a book called the DSM, and it lists, I don't know how many, but the bottom line of it is that there are mood disorders, there are thinking disorders, and then there are behavioral disorders. Well, the thinking disorder could be something as thinking negatively. Thinking negatively about yourself, about other people, puts you in a very bad position. It puts you.
Us think negatively. Does that mean we have a disorder?
Thinking negatively is a disorder that will affect your whole life. If you think everybody's untrustworthy, if you think people most people are the way your family members are, that's going to create problems for you, because you're not going to be able to form relationships with people that may be important just to, let's say in a work setting, to be able to advance. So thinking negatively is a disorder, as well as behaviors that you may do that cause disruption among other people.
I don't know. Then you're saying that the whole society has a mental disorder because everybody thinks negatively. I don't know if I agree with that.
Predominantly negative thinking.
Oh, predominance. Okay, so it is a degree of negativity that makes it a mental disorder. Okay, all right, that sounds reasonable.
Like this.
So,
if you tend to think negatively about situations, about people, that is a disorder.
Okay. So this idea of the mental illness being untreated mental illness contributing to a breakdown in families is probably one of the main things to look for, would you say? Because sometimes that's where everything else is coming from? Is that often the root?
There are many reasons. I don't want people to focus on only one thing. I think there's a combination of things that contribute to mental illnesses.
Okay. Addiction contributes to it, codependency. Okay, I get it. So what makes a strong family then? What is the thing that will, what are the things, or I'm sure it's a set of things that makes a strong family? Because we know there's a lot of breakdown happening right now, for sure. I mean, this crisis has compounded issues to the nth degree. So what can people do to strengthen their families today?
I think the basic thing that people can do to strengthen their families is to develop love. First, love for themselves. And we're talking about a healthy love, not an unhealthy love that where the individual is only concerned about their needs to the exclusion and destruction of other people. A healthy love.
Right there. This idea of a healthy love versus unhealthy love. You know, I disagree with that, because I don't know if there's such a thing as a healthy love versus unhealthy. There's just love, isn't there? When I read the Bible, 1 Corinthians, it says love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it is not rude, it is not self-seeking. But yet in our society, people feel like if they have a bunch of feelings, then that means they're in love, or it's love. So is there different healthy love and unhealthy love?
So
You're breaking up. Can't hear you. Can you say it again?
healthy love. Healthy love is described, as we discussed previously, in the Bible, and it's defined as being patient. You know, we talked before, you know, prior to our starting this session, that sometimes people think love is only a feeling. If I feel good towards you, then I love you. But love is much deeper. And as you mentioned, 1 Corinthians talks about action love. And the actions are to be patient, to be kind, not to be rude, to control yourself, not to be selfish, not to be easily provoked. You don't think about trying to do evil to other people for any reason, not little evil or big evil, if there's such a thing. You just joy in any type of evil, and you are a hopeful person. That healthy love. Unhealthy love can be seen in a person who is narcissistic. Now that person knows how to show love in order to hook people.
It's love with an agenda.
Manipulation. Love that's used to manipulate people for your own good. And ultimately the concern isn't for the other person. It's simply for you and meeting your own needs. That is an unhealthy love. I can't hear you.
How do people develop this love?
Well, psychologists and such, one of the ways they do is to try to help you focus on some love on whatever level you've experienced it, even if it's loving your dog. You know, you focus on that feeling and try to help you incorporate that feeling into, transfer it to other people. Also, they help you to try to distinguish between what we talked about, what real love is like. But I find myself, the best way to understand what love is, as a Christian person, is to take the time to get to know how God feels about you, which is that he loves you.
Right.
And to understand that and give yourself over to him completely, then you will experience his love, and then that love you can then share with other people. Now that love can come in the form of other people who know him coming to you and helping you.
Yes.
And then you recreate, you recreate a feeling of love, and then maybe you could take it off into different areas of your life.
Yeah, I had a conversation with my husband a few months ago. He had read 1 Corinthians 13, and he came to me to share what he, his insight. And he said, Angela, these people going around talking about that, I love you. And then they stab each other up in the next breath. You hear these horror stories. It's like, but that's because we confuse feelings and this lust with love, because love is an action. It's a verb, he kept saying. It's a verb. It's what you do. It's not what I feel. And the more you said it, I was like, yeah, he's right. It really is an action. What is next that you want to tell us about what makes a strong family? Well, loyalty is one of them, it seems like, right?
Yes. As we discussed, loyalty means that your first commitment is to your family. And I'll give you an example. So when my my son was a teenager in high school, well, you know, young people run into all sorts of issues and problems. And I think I, like many other mothers, found themselves going to the school for one thing and another. And I sat with my son to say to him, listen, I completely have your back, no matter what, okay? I am not going to do anything to shame you or to put you in any bad light. Tell me what's happened, so I know how I can support you when I go before the authorities in the school. And then once we get home, we'll sit down and we'll talk about what's right and what's wrong. So my loyalty was to protect him, to protect his self-esteem, to him, as opposed to being loyal to anyone else. So that's an example, loyalty from my own experience.
That is such a great example, because I know in my household with my children, you know, if I say something in front of my son's friend, he'll come and talk to me about it later on. Made him feel embarrassed. And I will apologize. And again, it's such a stark difference from how I grew up. Nobody cared about. I couldn't come tell my family or my mom or my dad that they shouldn't say something in front of my friend. They felt they were entitled to say whatever they want to say, because my feelings weren't important. And just to see my children, yesterday my daughter told me, she wrote on a piece of paper, she was mad at me, so she wrote on a piece of paper how I made her feel. And then she told me, she asked me, are you sorry? Yes or no? Circle it. And she left a paper on my table for me to circle it. And I just thought, oh my goodness, what a different household this is than what I grew up in. So I circled it and I said, okay. And my husband, you know, got involved and he was like, well, mommy said she's sorry and it's a contract. So then I said to her, what's the contract you're going to sign with me? Are you going to not talk back? Would you believe this child said no? She said, no, I'm not going to sign a contract. But it just, the fact that the lines of communication are open is really a healthy atmosphere for them versus how I was brought up. I'm learning so much about parenting. I have so much to learn as well. It's really a very interesting journey for me. What else contributes to a strong family, would you say?
Well, as leadership, meaning that the children shouldn't have authority in the home. The children shouldn't be making decisions about things. It doesn't mean that they can't contribute their thoughts, but they don't run. But sometimes leadership can be compromised when one or both parents don't assume their responsibility, and they use the children as a way to meet their own needs. Meaning that, let's just say if the mother feels neglected, many times what she will do is become her daughter's friend. And when she becomes her daughter's friend, the daughter now sees that as an equal relationship. And okay with the mom as long as the daughter is meeting her needs. But then when the mom turns around and wants to become the mom, she runs into all sorts of problems. The daughter is confused. Why am I okay to be your friend now? And why don't I have the same voice as you? So, and of course, when that happens, all kinds of confusion happens. It's hard to set limits. It's hard to, everything is challenged. There's a lot of rebellion, disobedience. That's
Wow.
sort of it.
Like
And
I said,
unfortunately, that seems to be more common than not.
because I have to say that for myself, it's a fine line between wanting to have my daughter feel secure with me and giving her the discipline she needs. Because on the one hand, we could be jumping rope together, having a great time. And at that moment, I'm like her friend. But then I'm also the same person who will say, you need to go to bed right now. And it becomes this like dynamic of me trying to balance both, for her to see me as her mother and also as someone that will play with her, not necessarily her friend, but her playmate. So without her thinking that we're on the same level. So I get that. So I'm learning how to balance that. You have any insight for me on that piece?
Well, you see, playing with your daughter is one thing. And then that's where guidance and leadership from your end comes in. And that's possible. But when you turn her into your confidant,
oh no,
you're talking to her about your problems and you're telling her about daddy and he's not okay. And you're telling her about auntie and everybody else in the world, when she becomes your best friend, and the problem comes in.
That's when the problem is. Oh no, we don't have that kind of relationship. I tell her nothing like that anyway. So tell me something, how we're winding down now. So tell me about how to cope with a dysfunctional family. How can people learn to cope with a dysfunctional family? We know what causes a breakdown. We know what a dysfunctional family is. We know what a functional family looks like, or do we? Do you feel like you need to talk about that a little bit more? But what does a functional family look like, and how do people get the breakthrough that they need to cope with a family that's dysfunctional? Maybe that's too many questions at once, so you can just break it down and answer accordingly.
Okay, a functional family is a family that's working to meet the needs of all the members. Everybody knows their role. They know what is expected. They come to see that all of whatever the rules are in that family is for the family's good, not to bring hurt or harm to anyone. So the functional family. Now, in terms of, well, what do you do when you find yourself in a dysfunctional family? Well, for little children, they have to endure. And that's where all the pain comes in. And that's where the pain many times ends up being bad memories that just won't go away no matter how old you are, Now, let's say as a teenager, you have a little more ability to reason and understand things. Hopefully you have someone, an adult that you can sit and talk with, but no matter, the process is still the same, and that is that you have to reach a point where you know how to be honest with yourself and figure out, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? And that's what we've been talking about through all the previous sessions. The importance of being aware of who you are, what works, what's not working. Emphasize what works, manage what doesn't work. Recognize try to recognize what's not working in your family. The important thing is not to take it personal. And for little kids and maybe teenagers, that's a real problem. It's a real problem because in many cases, a smart kid is going to think, oh my goodness, if my parents are so dysfunctional, I'm not going to make it. And so they tend to blame themselves and say, well, it's not their fault, it's my fault. And that creates, lots of other problems. But try to recognize as you've become older that you are dealing with a dysfunctional family. Try to figure out what the dysfunction in it is, and don't feed into it.
Don't feed into it.
Don't feed in. If you know that you have a controlling mom, that is her, change her, okay? So you do everything to try to let her not feel that she has to control you. For instance, you know, I don't know, you could be 18 and 20, whatever, you're living at home, okay? Let mom know where you're going. Don't, well, I'm grown, you know, don't do like one of my parents, one of my patients did to me when we were talking and he didn't like what I was saying. He says to me, I'm a grown ass man and I'll do what I want to do. No, no. Try to understand where your parent or parents are coming from and don't do anything to inflame the situation. That's just emotional management. And that falls under emotional intelligence. And actually, there's a book that has been written about it. It is called Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. And it would be worthwhile.
It's very helpful.
And then ultimately, and then, you know, you treat other people with the same compassion that you want. You know, we all make mistakes. None of us are perfect. By the way, that whole business of perfection, that's just a lie, okay? In fact, rather than many people who are dysfunctional use perfection as a way to attack people. But in a functional family, you would use it as a way to teach and to bond and to love. You see? So compassion. Be compassionate with yourself, be compassionate with other people, and seek professional help. You're going to need professional help.
Professional help. By the way, guys, in the event that you need a professional help, Dr. Brown is offering her services here on our platform, Eve Speaks, during this crisis, to give the support that you may need, the emotional support you may need for strengthening or coping with a family breakdown that you may be experiencing. A lot of people are experiencing some really dreadful things and they are ashamed or afraid to come forth, but it's a safe space for you to come and really talk about how you're feeling and how you want to restore health to your family. Thank you, Marsha, for joining. Coping with a dysfunctional family. Sometimes you don't even know where to turn, and this is why we are offering this free of charge on this platform. So thank you, Dr. Brown, so much for sharing those nuggets with us today. We really appreciate it. And if you have any last words that you want to share with the audience, please go ahead at this time.
Yes, I think coping with a dysfunctional family creates a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, and for that reason, forgiveness has to be a part of what happens if you want to heal. You have to forgive the people that offended you, your parents or whoever. You have to forgive yourself. And to that end, I've decided to put together a group that is going to focus on learning how to forgive. We will probably start within about a month or so. And so I hope people will think about it. It will be completely confidential. We'll do it on the phone. We won't know or see your face. So I hope that you consider joining.
That's an excellent resource. It will be confidential. It won't be on Facebook, and it will be on the phone. You need help and support to forgive. Once again, thank you for joining us in this session of Clarity in Crisis, Family Breakdown to Breakthrough. I'm hoping that you're having a breakthrough at this point in your life. Have a good day, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye. And of course, my daughter decides to join us because she doesn't listen very well. But we are having a family breakthrough moment. All right, bye-bye. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.